Remarkable people overcoming remarkable challenges with resilience, dedication, community, and grit. Listen as they share their stories of overcoming adversity. Open your eyes to what is genuinely possible for all of us. Authentic Adversity with host Chris Howe.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast. Today I'm sitting down with a good friend of mine. He's a tattoo artist here in Niagara. He's clean and sober for over 10 years. He helps others on a daily basis. He is the true embodiment of altruism. My good friend Daryl Hart. How are you, man?
How's it going, Chris? I'm good.
Great. It's good to see you as always. And, I would really want to thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with us.
No problem.
When I said I was going to do this, there was a little apprehension on my side, and, it was super cool of you. You just started sharing it with other people, and like, you were so supportive. And I mean, that's just your nature, right? Like that's who you are. I know you very well. And, I appreciate that about you. You're very, recovery minded, and you're not scared to share about this stuff. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's super important,
Yeah, it is.
I think for like a lot of us in general, there was like a lot of shame before we got clean and sober.
Mm-hmm.
And
for sure.
I think that I don't want to be ashamed of my sobriety the way that I was ashamed of my addiction.
Absolutely.
Go
ahead.
I think it's super important that people like you, that you do stuff like this and that you're visible. And it's because there's a lot of people out there that, they're not inside the places where we talk about these things,
right.
But they might be on their phone or on YouTube. And I think that's the best attraction we have.
Absolutely. Attraction rather than promotion, right?
Yeah,
man. I totally agree with you, and I appreciate that about you always. You're a friend that is very special to me. We've been in the rooms of recovery for around the same time, and you've always been there for me when I needed, like, whether it was just a call because things are getting tough, or go training together, go for breakfast and chat about life, really, you know what I mean? Like, these super important conversations outside the rooms of recovery. And you've always been a person that's there for me, and I know that you're that to many other people out there. And honestly, I remember when you came in the rooms, and you came to Niagara, and I first heard you speak and share in meetings, and I was a little envious of you, because the way you get your message across is so powerful and so intriguing. And I think you inspired a lot of people, even in your early days in sobriety. You were very open and honest, and it felt like you dove headfirst into it rather than kind of like tiptoeing around. And that was something that I noticed about you straight off the hop.
I think my attitude was formed over a lot of years of trying, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big part of my story that it took me 10 years to get 30 days.
Right. Right.
And I had tried being quiet,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried being in the back, and I tried being, I don't know, something that wasn't connected.
Yeah.
And by the time that I got, finally that I got to a place where I was in a position to have 30 days, I felt like I had used up all my embarrassment. I couldn't have ever been more embarrassed than I was the last day that I used. So
Mm-hmm.
I felt really like free to just say whatever and just feel whatever, because I was just so tired and like so beaten up that I'm like, nothing that's going to happen in here is going to be any more shameful or embarrassing than what I've been doing. So
that's really important for people to know, right? That people that are maybe on the outskirts of the rooms right now that might be thinking about it but not sure, like that. It's a safe space, and there's nothing that you can share in those rooms that is going to touch the guilt and the shame and the remorse of the things that we do when we're out there.
Absolutely, and just carrying that is heavy. I think for most of us, like, I can only speak for me, but I knew that my using and drinking was a problem a decade before I ever stopped.
Sure.
You know, and that's a heavy like millstone to carry every single day, of just knowing that the way you're living is not okay, and it just keeps getting worse. And you know, by the time, you know, I don't know, I just knew that I didn't have much else to lose.
Yeah.
You know, and
Exactly.
so being in there and talking was not scary to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
For
like
sure. For sure.
it just, everything else was scary.
Yeah.
But you know, being clean was scary. Being
Yeah.
sober was scary. But talking, I mean, I had already said everything I could have said to be embarrassed about before I ever got clean.
Right. And honestly, that's where we get our freedom in recovery, is to share about it. And I believe that that's sort of the weight coming off. The more we share, the more weight of our shoulders just like releases. And we don't, like you said, we don't have to carry those shameful things that we have been carrying for so long in active addiction.
Absolutely.
This episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast is brought to you and sponsored by Another Road Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. Another Road offers a client-centered recovery program tailored to every individual's circumstances. Their focus is to create a supportive, healing environment rather than a rigid, rule-based institution. Their dedicated commitment upholds the individual values, respecting each person's desire for recovery. Another Road understands that every individual requires a unique and focused approach to their recovery. Certain modalities of treatment are introduced along with the tools necessary for each client. Located in a rural setting, their addiction treatment center for all genders provides the perfect setting for a transformative recovery experience and sense of belonging. The private residential treatment facility offers an unparalleled program with counselors that have in-depth knowledge based on varying years of experience in addiction. Another Road utilizes unique, individual-focused plans for recovery that address the complexities of drug addiction, alcoholism, and prescription medication misuse. They have a 65% success rate when clients follow their program. I know many people who have completed this program, and they have absolutely rave reviews. To learn more, visit anotherroad.ca. I want to get into your story. You know, so you were born in Scarborough, Ontario, just outside of Toronto, or I guess it's a suburb of Toronto, or the GTA
I guess
now.
Yeah.
Your dad was an addict. Your mom, your mom was a single mom, and some pretty horrific things happened to you around the age 7. Can you kind of take us there?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in metro housing in Scarborough. Metro housing, for anyone outside of the GTA, it's government subsidized housing. It's generally equated to neighborhoods that aren't that fun to be in. Yeah. So from an early age, whether it was around my neighborhood or around my dad, there was always kind of using going on in my life. And really the only person, like my mom was the anchor of my childhood. You know, she was my like constant. She was the person that always was consistent. You know, like she was there every day. I know now, being a man, that, you know, my dad, he had the same problem that we do, and that he probably had, like all of us when we're using and drinking, is he probably had really good intentions. You know, but
like we all do.
Yeah, he just didn't have necessarily the best follow through.
Yeah.
You know, and that put me in environments the kids, they shouldn't be in.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure.
Situations, you know, I don't want to get overly specific, but one of those situations was that I was visiting him one time, and you know, he was dating whatever girl of the week, as we do when we're out there, and she had a son that was a little bit older, and they were doing whatever they were doing, and ended up alone with this kid, or I guess pretty much a man at this point. He was quite a bit older than me, and I was sexually molested by him. Jeez. And I I didn't even really acknowledge it at the time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it was something that, later in life, honestly, I didn't even address it till I was in recovery.
Right.
And it didn't come out through step work or anything like that. It came out because I went to visit my aunt, my dad's sister, and she told me, like, she reminded me, like, hey, do you even remember that time that, like, you came here and something was really wrong, and, like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't tell anyone what was going on? And I think that when something like that happens to you, especially when you're young, you don't know how to process it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We didn't, I didn't have any resources. I didn't know who to tell. I didn't even know that really that anything wrong had happened. I know that it felt not okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't think that it's hard to look back in hindsight and know what 7-year-old me felt about it. But
It is.
as
Yeah.
an adult, I know I felt betrayed,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there was a lot of that attached to my dad when he was using, not betrayal, but just kind of let down a little bit,
Right.
like
Right.
I would be really excited to see him, and he would be, coming off a run or something and just sleep the
Mm-hmm.
whole time or whatever.
Yeah.
And that time I felt like you're supposed to protect me.
Yeah.
This stuff's
Yeah.
not supposed to happen, and now as a parent, I know that feeling, like I couldn't imagine something like that happening,
Right.
and
Yeah.
he didn't know. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
tell him, but I carried it, and I carried it in, like, the worst way that you can carry something, which is just subliminally,
Okay.
and not in a place where I could address it because I didn't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
pushed it down, and it affected every relationship I had
Yeah.
my
I
entire
can
life.
relate to that 100%.
You
Yeah.
know,
There's
like I didn't know. Like I said, I had been in recovery for a couple of years when me and my aunt had that conversation, and it brought a lot of things back, and
mm-hmm.
thankfully, thank God, it put me in a position to address it.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I could have saved myself a lot of trouble had I been able to address it earlier.
Absolutely. And I mean, not having to carry that baggage around for so long and act out as a result of it. Like, I think
Yeah.
the sort of I spoke on another talk with a friend of mine about, like, young people being able to and having the opportunity to kind of unpack as they go, rather than to have to, like, fill the bag up until it's overflowing and then
Yeah.
unpack it, right? And then it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, where do I start and how do I do this, right?
Right. And the
Yeah.
difficult thing is that the stuff at the bottom of that bag, you probably don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
And that's that like subliminal stuff that you carry around, and there was other traumas that happened later
Right.
that made everything I was doing make sense.
Okay.
So I didn't even visit that one
Yeah.
because I was like, well, there's these other things. And I mean, as most of us do when we struggle to commit to recovery, is we like spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. Like, why did I end up this way?
Mm-hmm.
And that one wasn't even on the list.
Yeah. I mean, it's stuff so far down, probably, right?
Yeah, and I think too, there's those few things that we, like a reservation. Like, I don't need to talk about this. It was so long ago. It's so shameful.
Yeah.
It's so, I feel so at fault for it.
Right.
That I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, we're so used to not looking at it, right?
Right.
And it's just and we attach, especially, I think you touched on a good point there. Like, we attach a responsibility, like our own responsibility to that thing that we're shameful of, and it's like it becomes our fault. And many
Yeah,
times,
absolutely.
you know what I mean? Like, and some of it's stuff that was out of our control, and we just didn't understand it, and we made it our fault.
And I mean, I've talked to, since I've been able to talk about it and
Mm-hmm.
and be open about it. I've talked to so many survivors of these sorts of things, and people handle it differently, but I think unanimously, everyone at some point thought it was their fault.
Yeah.
And that's difficult, especially if you're a kid, because it's not your fault. You know, it's
Right.
you're a kid.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything except be a kid, you know, and so hearing that's the part about all the stories that when I talk to other survivors of those kinds of things, like it's the one part that just breaks my heart
Right.
is that, you know, we all know like the day we stop being a kid,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is weird, you know, and
100%. Yeah. And that
yeah,
for me is around the same age that you're talking, around 7 years old, and something very similar happened to me with
yeah,
a female caregiver. And it does. My world changed from that point, and you stop trusting the world, you stop trusting
hmm,
people, even people that you love. And yeah, just like you said it. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, you stop being a child, and
yeah,
you're like forced into this like adult world with emotions that our child brains are not even close to equipped to handle. So,
no,
I mean,
you're carrying adult burdens.
yeah,
You're not
yeah.
equipped for it.
It's not fair and very confusing. And to add to that confusion, when you're around 12 years old, your dad passes.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that like processing that, um,
Hmm.
I had already kind of gotten to a place where I was feeling pretty detached.
Yeah.
You know, I remember, so I was at my grandparents' house. I was home sick from school that day, and my dad left. And you know, my dad, when I was 9, he got clean and
Okay.
sober, and you know, that was my first introduction to recovery, to rooms.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, because I was
Wow.
like the annoying kid at the meeting. You know,
Yeah.
like
We all know him.
and
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, and I mean, I see him now, and sometimes I'm irritated by it, and you know, there goes me, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to touch on too because I talk to a lot of parents in recovery that are getting sober, getting clean, and you know, I don't remember anything about my dad's using that impacted me as much as getting my dad back or getting
Yeah.
him for the first time. You
Right.
know, and I think it's a really important thing to mention because I think that as parents and, you know, in the rooms, I see so many people carry so much guilt. And
Yeah.
it's okay, I get it, but I like vividly remember my dad getting clean.
Wow. That's
A lot
impactful.
of the I was in Tim Hortons eating a maple donut like when they told me he was in rehab. I remember that day. And I was
Okay.
9 years old. And there's not a
Hmm.
lot from that time period that I remember in that way. You
Right.
know, so it
Right.
was a really impactful event. And that 3 years was, you know, major for me. And
Yeah.
then he was at my grandparents and he had dropped me off that day and we got a call like 3 hours later and it was like, you got to come to the house. So we came to the house and there's police everywhere and that's never a good sign.
Hmm.
And they sat us down and they told me, and I just remember like not feeling anything,
Really.
which was a
Yeah.
really, and I knew objectively like I was supposed to feel something because
Yeah.
everyone around me was feeling intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just remember like going outside and I didn't know what to do with it. And
Yeah.
when I look back on it now, there was probably really early signs that I wasn't like processing emotions in a
Hmm.
way that was necessarily healthy.
And
You
especially the
know,
fact that, yeah, for sure, like, you've just, like you said, got your dad back for the first, or got your dad for the first
mm,
time in your life, and
yeah,
now out of your control, he's gone.
yeah.
And yeah.
And I would have expected anger even at the
Hmm.
unfairness or something, but it
Something.
just was
Yeah.
nothing. It was just
Wow.
nothing. And later it was something. I think, you know, shock plays a big part. If you lose
Hmm.
someone abruptly in that way, like there is a amount of shock. But I remember being at his funeral and not crying, you
Yeah.
know, and I remember like feeling like I should be, like
Okay. Yeah.
because everyone around me was. But I'm
Right.
like, how come I'm not doing that thing that everyone else is doing? And I
You're not
think
feeling the same thing that everybody else is. What's wrong with me?
right, and I think some
Yeah.
events previously had left me understanding that vulnerable is not like a safe place.
Okay.
And I think that outward display made me feel vulnerable,
Right.
right? And so I think that I learned real early how to like detach from it, and
Okay.
not
Yeah.
really detach, but how to like put it away in like a little compartment and like close the box and
Lock it up.
go right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's I think that if I'm reflecting, probably like a real early red flag of like,
Yeah.
this is not how you're supposed to deal with your feelings.
Right. And then, I mean, shortly after that, introduce alcohol and drugs, right? Like,
Yeah, and that was my ticket, right? Like,
yeah.
and I talk about that a lot when I speak, or when I even just relate to people. Like, I didn't try it and think like, this is really cool. Like, I got high for the first time, and I instantly, my reaction was, I want to feel like this all the time.
All the time. Right.
Like, it
Right.
wasn't like, oh, this could be cool to do sometimes. I was like,
Yeah.
this is it. This is the key.
Mm-hmm.
This is my thing. And I didn't even know that there was like more effective things.
Right.
Like,
Right.
we're starting at like a real low grade thing, and I just remember being able to unplug from my life and thinking like, and I think even before that, I think I was an only child, and I used to like indulge in like what I call like fantasy. Like, I used
Yeah.
to just spend like hours in my room because I didn't feel good about myself.
Right.
And I remember just spending hours in my room like pretending to be someone else. And then when I found out you could like buy that, it was
Yeah.
on.
Dude,
It was.
yeah. I mean, God, it's crazy sometimes. You listen to people tell these stories and talk about their childhood, and it's like, that's my story. Like, how do
Yeah,
we have the same story? It's same thing with me. And it's like, it's wild. And yeah, like you said, now you have a tangible thing to, you don't have to use your imagination. You have the tangible thing that you can go out and buy,
yeah,
and all of a sudden you're in that fantasy world again, and you're somebody who you're not without substances, and all of a sudden there's people around you, and there's excitement, and there's danger, and
yeah,
there's a lot of extreme sense pleasures, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I like myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't remember that feeling a lot of my life. Like, I don't remember feeling like when I went outside that I was important.
Right.
Like, I
Yeah.
remember feeling like I was kind of in the peripheral of life, and that other people, I remember even like grade school being like, man, these people got it figured out. Like, I don't know how they're doing this.
Okay. Yeah.
Like how they're so effortlessly just existing. And I'm like, it's a lot of effort for me.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was, when I found substances, like, that was perfect.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
just kind of continued that way.
Yeah. So was it for you, was it like the escalation of your using, was it a quick like a quick run to the top, or was it sort of a gradual? I mean, you said that you were wanting to feel that way all the time, which I can totally
Yeah.
relate to. Did you
I'm,
kind of skyrocket through that?
no, I still had like checks and balances in my life at that point.
Okay. Yeah.
I always think about um, like my progression in addiction as like selling little pieces of myself, right?
Right.
So at the start, I still had a really full tank. I still listened to my mom. Like, I still
Yeah.
like cared what people thought. I still very much understood like how much appearances matter,
Okay. Okay.
and so yeah, I had friends. We got we got fucked up on the weekends, or at lunchtime at school. But like, when I look back on it, I know that my using and my drinking was problematic because I wasn't doing it for the same reason.
Yeah.
Like, these guys wanted to have fun, and I just wanted to get as far away from me as possible.
Yeah. They were having fun. You were escaping.
Right. But
Mhm.
I still got to wave that like partying flag,
Okay.
right? Like, it still very much appeared like I just like to have a good time,
Right. Right.
and I think that it wasn't until later, when everything happened with my mom, that I really kind of just didn't care anymore.
Yeah. Talk about that.
So when I was I got like kicked out of high school and then like trying to finish high school. And right around that time, like I was working in bars, which was like a super great avenue for me to just constantly be around.
Yeah.
But I remember like I got a call. My mom had been telling me about, she had been experiencing some like flu-like symptoms. Her stomach was hurting and stuff like that. And she finally like went to emerge. And I remember I got a call at work and they were like, "You got to come to the hospital." I'm like, "All right." And I'm like 18, 19, maybe 17.
Yep.
I'm not really sure. Um, and I went to the hospital and they told me that my mom had stage 4 colon cancer.
Wow. Yeah.
And again, like just same reaction, just like
Nothing.
not void of anything really. I couldn't comprehend it, because for me, like I wasn't attached to a lot of people,
Yep.
in an emotional way. And that was a reoccurring theme for me.
Okay.
But my mom was like everything.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
she was my best friend. She was my constant. She was the thing that I based everything on. Like
Wow. Yeah.
everything, all the moral choices that I make even now are very
Yep.
much rooted in who she was as a person.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
my mom was a very holistic person. She did like a lot of stuff that I still whatever I don't really mess with. But
Yeah.
she did like, she was super into like hippie stuff, man. Like she was
Yeah.
very like love and nature and all that stuff. And it was my soft place to land. She was my constant. And when they told me I had about a year,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
part of me is grateful because I didn't have that with my dad.
Yes. Okay.
And a lot of the things that I think about with my dad is like all the things you wish you said, right? When
Right.
someone
Right.
leaves suddenly, well, now you have a year, you should say what you got to say. You
Yeah.
know, um, the problem is that I have a very for real substance abuse problem,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and I didn't really show up for her in the way that I wanted to.
Yeah. I've heard you talk about this before, and
Yeah,
I know it's a painful place to land, and it's I think that speaks to the true weight of our addiction when we have this opportunity to be there for somebody in a certain time window,
yeah,
and the substances are taking us away from that most important thing in our life. It speaks to our addiction, right? Like that becomes more important than that thing that's been constant for you, that thing that's been always there, and like you said, the soft place to land.
yeah,
Yeah.
and avoidance too, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't have to feel how terrible this is if I just avoid it,
Yep.
and so I relate it to being stuck, like, and much like I spoke about earlier, much like I'm sure my dad had really good intentions.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I did. I had really good intentions of being there for her, and you know, um, not doing the things that I was doing, but I didn't know how to cope with what was going on, and so
Okay.
I turned to the thing that I used to cope, which is
Right.
getting stuck.
Yeah.
And I would say, tomorrow I'm gonna go and I'm gonna spend the whole day with her.
Yeah.
And then that day I would just keep getting more. I'd say another one, right? Like I get another one and then I'll go after this one. And then I would get another one, but I promise I'm leaving after this one. And the reality is most days I didn't show up,
Yeah.
and she went through a lot of that without me. And we did have some incredibly good conversations, and we did have some things that I appreciate now.
Yeah.
We did
Yeah.
have conversations that were difficult to have with each other, and
Let me
but
ask you
not
something
enough.
real quick. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt you there. I
yeah,
just it just I wanted to ask you at that point. You saw your dad get sober for that last bit of his life, and now
yeah,
you're on this journey with your mom, this short journey, and Is there anything in you at that time, or was it your mom's wish that you change something up, or was there anything that sort of said like, I've seen somebody do this and get well. I know that that's available to me.
I wasn't that interested, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah,
At the time, it didn't feel like the way it feels now, right? At the time, I just wanted relief and comfort. I think that's what when we're using and drinking, I think that's what we're looking for is just comfort, like and relief from the way we feel.
right.
I did end up having a conversation. My aunt like comes in. She's like the person that reminds me of where I come from and who I am and stuff.
Okay.
But she's my one constant. Like she's one of the only people in my life that's known me through like all the phases of
Yeah.
of how this looks. And she told me that my mom said to her like that I know what he's doing, but I also understand that his friends are really important because when I'm gone, that's all he'll have.
Wow. That's
You
heavy.
know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and I didn't find that out till like this year. She said that to me.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yeah, and it made me feel really relieved
Yeah.
because at least I know that my mom kind of understood what I was going through.
Yeah.
And you know, on the last day with her, I just remember she was like in the hospital. And when people are dying in that way, it's like there's no other real word for it. They're just super fucked up,
Yeah.
you
It
know.
really is.
And I didn't have a lot of time left. It was the last day, and it was pretty clear it was the last day. And I remember telling her like, "You did a good job. Like I'm gonna be all
Right.
right." Like,
Okay.
and knowing like I wouldn't be all right like that day,
Yes.
but that she had equipped me with the tools that if I did want to be all right, that I could.
Wow.
And
Yeah. That's special.
yeah, and then I
Yeah.
and then I went out and got fucked up,
Well,
and and
yeah. Yeah.
and and I continued doing that for a decade.
Okay.
And that was when using and drinking got away from me. That's when I
Okay.
think that it turned in from me definitely having like an issue with substances to
For
like
sure.
me not giving a shit if I died or not. You
Yeah.
know, because I have a weird perspective on that stuff. Like I'm older than my dad was when he passed away, and I'm not that old.
Okay. Right.
And in a couple of years, I'll be older than my mom is. And to
Wow.
me then,
Yeah.
to me then, they felt really old.
Mm-hmm.
But to me now, I'm like, that's not enough time.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so I was living a lot like I wasn't gonna make it anyway.
Yeah. I can
So
relate to that 100%.
I
Yeah.
might as well indulge and just do what I want to do because fuck it,
Yep. Fuck it.
that was really that was where I became kind of unhooked completely from any kind of care about what was
Right.
going to end up happening to me,
I mean, in
and that
that point
allowed me
too.
to like,
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like
yeah,
now, I mean, there's so much trauma there, like trauma that you're not in any place that you want to look at, that you can deal with, or like, and like us being, you know, men, or we were boys in our 20s, really, because we were acting
yeah,
like it, right? Like
yeah,
it's not it, and especially when we were younger, there wasn't these conversations weren't happening, the open, honest conversations where, you kind of knew that you could go and like confide in somebody. It was like very few and far between. So I mean, you're carrying
yeah,
a whole ton of stuff with you in those early, like those your 20s, right? Like they're big years, and you're carrying around
yeah.
stuff that nobody should have to carry.
And
And yeah.
I was carrying it in a way that is so blatantly unhealthy.
Right.
Like
Right.
it wasn't even like I was like lashing out really. I mean, there was a few times where I would be really fucked up and I would like cry or like lash out or, I remember those things happening and my friends around me not really knowing like how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Like, cause it was the only state that I could even let it out. But I like the day after my mom died, I just went to work.
Wow.
Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do. I just kept going. Like
Jeez.
I just got up and I went to work and I
Yeah.
went to work the day after that and I And I just kept living like it didn't happen.
Right.
And I mean,
Yeah.
that was kind of a very uniform behavior for most of my life. And I found out later it's a symptom of underlying stuff like PTSD and things like that. Like I understand now that that was a symptom of what I was going through, but it also fed into my feeling of looking at people in the world and not understanding how they were existing in the
Effortlessly. Yeah,
effortlessly.
for sure. I mean, I honestly, I thought I used to look at people that were like seemingly successful or quote unquote normal and
Yeah.
think liar, liar,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
liar.
for sure.
Bullshit. Like
You
you like
know,
either that or I'd be insanely jealous and be like, "Oh my God, that's not me." So I hate that person because I can't be that. And you make
and
it look so
envious,
effortless. Envious, yeah,
super
100%.
envious of just people being like really carefree and
Yeah.
really like I had a hard time with people having parents for a long time, which is like a really weird thing. It's not
No,
weird
but it's
based on my
understandable.
situation, but I
Yeah.
mean, people used to invite me to Christmas, right? Because when you don't have parents, people people don't like when you're alone on Christmas, which
Right.
I actually like. Funnily enough, didn't mind that much because
Is
it
that
was
right?
like pretty relaxed. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
the one day a year where like nothing was going on. I could just kind of hang out. But
Okay.
you know, people would invite you to things, and I remember just sitting in those situations, being like, "You guys are just sitting here. You have no idea. Like you have no
Right.
idea." You know, or I would get really mad if people would be like, say to me like, "Oh, your mom passed away." Yeah, and like my aunt died. I know how it feels. I'm like, you fucking don't. But okay, you know.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of that. You know, that internal kind of fuck you ness.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you have no idea what I'm going through, right? Like that big ego thing that we have. Like
Ye-
nobody could
yeah.
possibly understand. You
Yeah.
know,
I'm so
and if
unique.
you could, you would stop bothering me about what I'm
Right.
doing. And that was a lot of my life. Was caring like so much what other people thought, but like also not caring at all what they thought. That weird
Yeah,
dichotomy that we live with, right?
for
Of
sure.
this overwhelming need to be liked and approved of, but like also like not knowing how to exist in that. And
Yeah.
then
It's I've never actually heard it actually I mean, like like said that way to me, but that's totally it, right? Like it's this
yeah,
like I I don't give a fuck like when I'm fucked up like it's fuck you fuck everybody just all about me
yeah,
and then all of a sudden at the same time I'm like but also still love me for
yeah,
being an
no,
asshole, love me for my all my faults, but like you
yeah,
know
and excuse them, right? Like just
yeah
excuse them for me because you know, if I told you my sad story, you wouldn't blame me, you know. And
yeah
dude, I leaned on that pretty heavy when I
okay
was getting high. You know, is like if you've been through what I've been through, you would do this too. And I know now that that's like there's no real word. Like it's just bullshit. You
right
know, it's total. It's me manipulating situations, right? And it's like not being willing to acknowledge that I have feelings and that you know things can if I want them to get better. You
for
know,
sure
and
yeah
it's
avoidance at its finest, right? Like
yeah, it's beautiful, right? It's perfect for an addict.
for an
It's
addict,
just
yeah.
like it's the perfect state to exist in. Is like I'm so hard done by. I'm a victim. If you were a victim like me, you wouldn't blame you for doing this. So let me do it, right?
Right.
And it's such a crock of shit, but it works when you're justifying your using,
Yes,
right? And
that's right, justifying.
you're not at that place where you feel like it's possible to get out,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
I think that's like the end of using is so crazy because it's like how did I go this long without thinking that it might be possible to stop doing that?
yeah.
It's
So yeah, it's crazy, right? Like so what did that look like for you? Like I mean sort of that like deep dive into addiction and then the kind of crawling out, like what were the events leading up to your final decision to get sober and clean your life up?
I mean, the last day I have like paperwork for it. So
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
there's some people around me that were really concerned.
Okay.
Um, at that point, I just wanted to die because I didn't know how to get out,
Right.
and I didn't know how to stop letting people down. and I didn't know how to learn how to live with the kind of pain that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to, and I'm saying I didn't know in a way like I did know. I'd been to detox, I'd been to meetings, I had gotten a gang of 24-hour chips and white key tags, but I hadn't yet heard it, you know.
I
So
do.
I told myself I didn't know, and I woke up on my 30th birthday in a mental health ward on what's called in Canada a Form 1, and it's a 72-hour suicide prevention. They retain you for 72 hours to make sure that you don't hurt yourself. Mm-hmm. And they take it pretty seriously. And I mean, the hard part about that was like nobody even knew where I was really. Right. Like, you know, my family didn't know. Like I had been kind of just disassociated from everything to a point where people either were too upset with me and my behavior to care that I was there at the time, or I just straight up didn't know because I had alienated them from my life.
And maybe some of the people that did know thought, good, that's the place he needs to be right now, right?
Yeah, and I've thought that way about people now, so I get it, you know. But it wasn't the worst situation I'd ever been in.
Yeah.
It wasn't the worst off I'd been, but I just remember being like so fucking tired.
Yeah.
Like just the panic of by that time, you know, I'd had a pretty heavy duty opiate addiction for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of anxiety bottled in with that, and how to get another one before you get sick, and how am I going to stay well so I can, you know, and just years of it had just beat me to a place where I don't know if I believe in rock bottom, but I believe in tired. And I was tired. Okay. You know, like it was the thought of doing it again tomorrow, you know, like that really, I just was too tired.
Yeah.
It was like the end of it was like if you go running to the point where your legs stop working, that's how I felt. Like I just felt like I can't make the moves again. I'm out of moves. There's no more moves to make. I gotta go. And I remember, you know, one of my best friends, we've been friends since we were like 12. He came to the hospital and he was like, you know, I want to see you do good, man. Like I care. And he doesn't have any issues. He's never been to recovery. He's just a good guy, you know. And he's like, I'll drive you where you need to go, man. Where you need to go, you know. And I got on the phone and I got into detox. And then when I went to detox, I remember this is probably the first time I've been to this detox multiple times. And there's this lady Brenda that worked there, and she kind of knew me by now. Like I'm covered in tattoos, not super hard to miss, right? And I remember just sitting down being like, I just got to go somewhere. Like, if I go home, I'm just going to die. And I just don't want to die. And I don't want to run around. Worse, not even I don't want to die. I don't want to get up and run around again. Yeah. And just make moves day after day to keep this show going. It's too much. And
you didn't have it in you anymore, right? Like it's surrender
it's
finally.
Tired, man. Yeah. And she goes, well, there's this place in St. Catharines called Wayside, and you can go there and you can get in. Because I didn't have insurance. I didn't have none of that. Yeah. So I was like, is it free? Because I don't have any money, you know. And she's like, yeah, it's free. And I'd never even been to St. Catharines before, but it's like what we talked about earlier. Like, I was just like, how much more could I lose, really?
Right.
Just fuck it, just go.
Yeah.
And I went, and that was June 26th, 2012 is my date, and it's also my 30th birthday. So amazing. I never used or drank in my 30s so far, you know. I just left my 30s, so now I'm 40. So it's weird to have a birthday and a clean date on the same day. But,
that's very cool, though. I mean, it's an extra reason to celebrate. So you're in St. Catharines at Wayside House, which is a sober living recovery house for people like us. What happens next?
What happens next is that I don't do any of the things they tell me to do. Um,
Okay.
like,
As
but like I continue the appearance thing, right? That
yep.
we're all prone to. So the first meeting I go to, like, boom, that's the home group. So I can go, but not because I feel like it's my home, but because I want to go back to the recovery house and get praise for like having a home group, you know. And
Okay.
and I promptly got a sponsor, not because I wanted to call them, but for the same reasons. Like, I wanted to go back to the recovery house and tell everyone that I had a sponsor and get praise for, like, working a good program. And
Right.
I mean, if you've ever been in a recovery house, there's a lot of that going on because
Mm-hmm.
everyone's trying to figure out kind of where they even just landed. They're coming from a place that's just complete chaos, and then they're all like, boom, here's like 20, 30 dudes. They're all in here
Yeah.
together, and they're
It's a
gassing each
funny
other
thing,
up.
right?
And
Like everybody, it's a funny place where everybody's trying to do two things. They're trying to out recovery each other, but they're
yeah,
also trying to out story tell each other as well, right? Like
right, yeah,
you weren't
and
nearly as bad as me. Like
oh my God, I there was like 5 Pablo Escobars in the recovery home with me, if you believe them, you know what I mean? And
right.
I I don't believe it, but but it was like, it's the kind of place, like, you hear dudes arguing about who's the most humble, like
Yeah.
that kind of weird dichotomy of, like, do you know what that word means?
Right.
And so, but I much like everything in my life, the program didn't start working for me until I started getting into real situations.
Okay.
Um, so I was at this recovery home and everything was good, but it was like basically like summer camp for people that, like, are fucked up.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like, we're all sleeping in the room with air conditioning, like a little slumber party. It's like a gang of 30-year-old dudes, and all the weird smells that come out of you when you're just getting that stuff out of your body. It's just I look back on it now, it's kind of funny, but at a certain point in time, the director of that place had decided that I just wasn't being all that serious about it.
Okay.
And at the time, I was super angry about that opinion. Looking back now, like, he was dead right.
Right. You would have done the same.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
have done the same thing to me, behaving the way that I was behaving, because I was more interested in going for coffee with the guys after the meeting, and more interested in I don't know, being popular, I guess.
Yeah.
Is or
Weird place to
whatever.
be popular, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's super weird place. Like,
yeah.
it's like, you're the most popular guy at rehab. You're not doing it right.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that's important to know about though, right? Because like, I mean,
yeah, it's
that
true.
happens so much. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a cool kid table at rehab, and
Yep.
I definitely cared about being at it. And
Yep.
they kicked me out for not participating in morning exercise,
Okay.
and because I'm defiant, I don't like being told what to do, and
Right.
and it's the root of a bigger issue. The thing they wrote down was that I wasn't participating in morning exercise, and it hit me all like at once. And I remember
Right.
them calling me in the office saying, "You got to go," and it just, like, collapsing. Like, I don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
I don't have a home. I don't have really family that I feel comfortable calling. There's still a lot of shame around that. And
Right.
I don't, and my friends, as much as I'm sure they would give me a ride somewhere, like, are not letting me stay at their
Yeah.
house. And so it's like, and so I had to walk across the street to a homeless shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, that's the first time in my life I ever ended up in a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
Like, I was clean and sober
Yeah.
and homeless. And I remember that day was the first time that I called my sponsor.
Wow. Okay.
And I called him from a payphone. I didn't even have a cell phone. And
Yeah.
and he said to me, I was all hyped up, as we are when we're being over egotistical,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, it's bullshit. They kicked me out. I can't believe these people. They don't want me to, like the victim thing. Like, they don't want me to succeed, right? And it's just
Right.
like, I haven't met a worker in the field of addictions yet that doesn't want you to succeed. But that's beside the
Right.
point.
Yeah.
It's like, But and he just calmly listened to me, and he had like almost 20 years at this point. Now he's got a ton more, well, 10 more. But and he just said to me like, well, what did they kick you out for? And I was like, not participating in morning exercise. Like, how stupid is that? And he just said, no, they kicked you out because you're an asshole and you don't want to listen to nobody.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, the carrot and the stick, right? And he's very good at that.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, you don't know how to act, and you're not conducive to other people trying to get better when you're acting that way.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. And he goes, that being said, there's a lot of people that have been in your situation and stayed clean and stayed sober. Wow, and this is not an excuse to go get one. And I would say that period was the time that convinced me that recovery works.
Right.
Because just down the street, as neighborhoods with homeless shelters tend to be, right down the street there was a park. And I walked to that park that day.
Okay.
After this conversation. I remember there was a girl down there, one of the girls that works out there, and she was getting high. And I just looked and I was like, you can go down there. But like, and I don't know if my thought process was like this prolific in the moment. It just sounds better when I say it this way, but it's like, this was similar to what I thought. Like, if you go down there, that place that you're staying in is the best your life's ever going to be.
Okay.
It's not going to ever get better than that.
Right.
You're going to be at a place like that, or detox, or a recovery home, or jail, or dead. And it hit me like that. Right. And I walked back and I learned how to be uncomfortable, which I think is really important when you're in recovery, is like being uncomfortable, because where you're comfortable is super fucked up.
For sure. Yeah.
But it wasn't long until I started seeing benefits. So I remember like talking to my sponsor, and he's like, yeah, I don't want you to go back to tattooing right now. Like, you got to get a job. And I'm like, why? He's like, the last thing you need is a place where they give you a bunch of money and tell you how great you are. Yeah. And I mean, my job does entail like people giving me money and telling me how awesome I am. And that would have been real bad for me at that point. I had to live through what I was living through. And so I went and got a job making pizzas for like $9 an hour under the table at this pizza place, like up the street from the recovery home. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And I remember like how humbling that was, and how much it reconnected me to like the reality of my situation.
Cool.
And I cherish that time, because the people that were at this shelter that I was living at, I was doing everything I could just to not be around there all day. So I went and joined like a day treatment program just to have somewhere to go.
Right.
Or I would wake up in the morning, I would eat breakfast, and I would be out, and I would be at 3 or 4 meetings in a day just to not be there.
Yeah.
Or I'd be at my little job just to not be there, right? And the people that run that place, they saw what I was trying to do. Right. And I remember them, because there's people getting high in the room that I was living in. There was like all kinds of that stuff. And I remember like the kind of the director of the shelter pulling me into an office one day, and I'm like, dude, I didn't do nothing. Like, my automatic thought is I'm going to get kicked out of here too.
Wow.
Because the last time I got pulled in an office, I ended up here. So like, I don't know where I'm going to go if you kick me out of here.
Right.
And I'm like, I didn't do it. Like, whatever happened, I didn't do it. And he said, man, I just want you to know, like, we see what you're trying to do. And we've decided that we're going to give you your own room. We're not supposed to give you this room.
Wow.
But we all want you to not be around the things you're around. And this room was like, I have a closet in my bedroom now, like a walk-in closet. This room was literally the size of the walk-in closet. I remember being so grateful. Yeah. For just my own space.
Sure.
And it was the first time that said, Daryl, if you keep doing what you're doing, people will see it. And they will help you. Like, if you just keep showing up, like, nobody cares about what you say. Like, they care about what you do.
Right.
And I didn't talk my way into that I didn't go
Yeah.
in there and give them some spiel like yada yada yada. This is what I'm trying to do. I just did it,
Yeah, you
and they
actioned your way
saw
to
it,
it.
and they
Mm-hmm.
said, "Look, this kid is really trying to stay away from the bullshit that goes on here every day, and we're
Wow.
gonna help him out." And
Very
as a
cool.
result, that was my that was the that was my leaping pad to like the life I have now.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, so
Yeah,
inspirational. And it's like it took to get to that point to
yeah,
recognize that yeah, the actions are what people are going to notice, and that's what internally probably gives back, 100 times more than what you're saying, because it's most
absolutely.
likely empty at that point, right? And my
Hmm.
actions are what matter, and they matter when people aren't watching, or when I think people aren't watching, because people are noticing.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
just doing my thing. Like I was just trying to do my best to get up out of it.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like I wasn't trying to impress the dude at the check-in. I stopped trying to impress people, and I just started trying to be the man I wanted to be.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
that was the lesson, right? It's like nobody cares what you say.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. That's super inspirational, and I think
yeah,
it's just really important for people, especially in early recovery, to hear. Right?
yeah,
It's about the what you're doing.
right. And
Mhm.
it's always been about that, but I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like I had spent my whole life trying to talk my way in or out of something.
Right. As
You know,
as we get good at as addicts,
yeah,
right? And it's like,
but
oh,
it
now
never
my
works.
right, right, my manipulations and my tactics are useless out here
Yeah,
in the real world. I you know
and
it.
it's so short term even out there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like
Oh
I can
yeah.
talk my way into something, but it's going to become real evident quick that I'm lying.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Definitely.
So yeah, it's that was a really that dictated the way that I treated recovery till now
Yeah.
was
Yeah, and it
really just
shows.
you have to.
Yeah.
I've never seen it work for me. I can't speak about anyone else, but like for
Right. Right.
me, it's just always been about like physically showing up.
Yeah. So important. And so from that point, I mean, I know your relationship with your sponsor is like second to none. You guys are super tight. He's an awesome guy. I've met him a couple
Yeah,
times, and I mean, I know the hard work that you've put in, but then at what point do you start sponsoring other people and start to think about, like, okay, I've done my work, and I'm continuing to do my work. Now it's time to give back a little.
it happened pretty quick
Okay.
because like I can share. Like
Yeah. I know
it's
you
just a
can.
thing that I can do,
Yeah.
and it's not
Yeah.
like super intentional. It's probably crafted from that need to be liked, you know what I mean, and that need to be approved of. But at a certain point, I just started talking about how I was feeling in a way that it just look, this is me,
Yeah.
and that resonated with people around me, and I think I had like a year and some change, and
Cool.
people started asking me to sponsor them, and I was terrible at it. I took it
Yeah.
like super personally, and I was super like judgmental, and I everything they were doing that was wrong, I was like on it. Like I wasn't letting people live. I
Yeah.
was, I was like, no, no, whatever you're doing, like I don't agree with it. You got to do it like this, right?
I
And
think we all do that a little bit when we start sponsoring and giving back
oh
that way. It's
yeah,
like we feel this, like this need to control the situation, and it's like it's addict behavior coming back in a way that we frame as
yeah,
like, yeah, an altruistic kind of like service, right? It's an act of
yeah, and
service, we call it. So then we're like, oh, whatever I think and say, this person has to listen to, and
right.
it can be a funny place to live for a while.
I call it squeaky clean. And
Yeah.
you see people go through it between a year and like 3 years. Where
Right.
they are infallible, and
Yeah.
it's like they haven't fucked up sober enough to be on like the front page of the AA Times yet,
Yeah.
and like they still think that the way they're doing it is the right way and it's the only way, because that's the
Right.
only way I could feel okay about it. I come from a place I was so afraid to go back to that I needed this to be the right way,
Yes.
and people having other ways made me feel insecure. So I had to
Okay.
believe that my way was the right way because I didn't understand like responsibility
Yeah.
or like discipline yet. I just knew that like this worked for me, and if you're not doing this, then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I think
Right.
if you spend any amount of time in rooms of recovery, like you've heard that sentiment a million
100%.
times, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're not doing it this way, then you're not doing it the right way, and if you're not doing it the right way, you'd be back out there. And it's like
Right.
it doesn't feel like the most encouraging attitude to me, but I understand it because I've had it, you know.
Yeah.
And it, yeah. But I had an incident happen where I had 7 sponsees pass away in a year,
Wow.
you know,
Wow.
and it's not my fault that they used. It's not my fault that they passed away, but it would be irresponsible of me to not look at how I might improve that experience.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, like it's irresponsible for me to not look at it.
Yes.
You know, it's very easy to be like, it's their choice. We can't do nothing to stop nobody, you know, yada, yada, all the things we say.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be irresponsible for me to not take a look at it.
Cool. That's very like mature and humble, really, right? Because you've
Yeah.
had to look at it and say, okay, what, yes, terrible situation. What can I learn from this, and how can I help others as a result of this, and how can I change my my approach or whatever? Constantly learning, right? I think it's so important when it comes to this stuff.
And I think like everything else in my life, it had to beat me over the head. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like I wouldn't have taken that responsibility had I not had to go to a funeral and have someone's mom ask me why their baby's dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like that shit, that is heavy duty shit. And if you're not taking a look at that, like, I don't know, I have to. You know, when someone's mom, like moms get me, dude. Like it's like
Of
I'm pretty
course.
good at
Yeah.
disconnecting from addicts, doing what addicts do, but like moms, like man, I can't not pick up the phone for them.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, have someone's mom be like lose their baby and then watch them go through it.
Yeah.
It would be irresponsible of me to not look at how I might improve helping people.
It's a great way to look at it. I mean, like I said, that's the responsibility and it's a big responsibility when you're sponsoring somebody or mentoring somebody in recovery, right? Like it's not, this is not light stuff. This is not like you were buddies. This is like, you're brought real time problems that are not little problems.
Yeah,
They're
no, they're
life
big
threatening
problems.
at times. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've said that so many times to sponsees, like where they're like, yeah, but we're friends. And I'm like, I'm not your friend.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you have friends. I'm not your friend. You don't need me as a friend.
Right.
You need me to say the things to you that you don't want to hear.
Right. And I care more about your life than your feelings right now.
Yeah. And not in a callous way or a
No.
way that I want to like, but in a way that like, I really don't want to talk to your mom after this.
Yeah.
You know, like
Right.
I don't, you're going to do what you're going to do, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, any amount of time in this thing, you realize that, but it would be irresponsible for me not to have hard conversations with you.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
because
Exactly.
that's what my sponsor did for me, and I can only sponsor people the way my sponsor showed me, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
to this day, last week, I'm having conversations with him that made me want to hang up on him.
Yeah, that's when you got a good one, right?
Yeah, like you know,
Yeah.
and he's like my family now. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I've watched his kids grow up. Like you know, like I go to birthdays, Christmas, everything. Like we're family, but he has the ability to say the things to me that I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, and I have the trust in him that he loves me enough that he's willing to say those things to me.
Yeah, so important. That is the main thing about this sponsee relationship, and
Mm.
and not even that, just like us as people in recovery and just good people, right?
Yeah.
We owe that to our friends, to our family, to whoever we love, to have the
Mm-hmm.
conversations that they're not maybe looking for, or not maybe willing to. I mean, they're obviously not willing to look at themselves, so they need these outside opinions and like these real, like, they need people to be real with them. And
Yeah,
we are
and
responsible for that as people, as good people operating in this world today, right?
and I think you need to reconfirm to me that I should be doing the thing I know I should be doing, but I don't want
Right,
to do.
right, right.
Because
Yeah,
now he's not telling me groundbreaking stuff. Like he's not
yeah.
telling me like stuff that I don't know, but he's
Hmm.
reaffirming to me that what I was talking the other day to someone about the greatest gift I think that sobriety recovery like has given me is the ability to just stop for a minute and think about what I'm doing before I do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of just reacting. And I was in a situation last week where like my reaction was not good.
Okay.
Like it was all ego. It was all like 100% just right.
Hmm.
But I've made a decision about the kind of man I want to be.
Right.
And I make that decision every day. And I knew what I should do, and I had to call him to co-sign that is what
Yeah.
I should do.
Right. Right. I mean, and that's amazing that you have that ability to pick up the phone, and that phone
Yeah,
doesn't weigh 1,000 pounds like it sometimes feels like for us in recovery. That,
yeah.
like, I know where I can call to get like the real shit. I
Hmm.
can, and like you said, for somebody to either co-sign my next move or what
Mhm.
I'm thinking or whatever, or to say, no, you're way off the mark. This
Yeah,
is from where I'm sitting. This is what it looks like to me. It's
yeah.
super important. Yeah.
And it's a lot of work on my behalf as a sponsee too. Is that like I've been honest with him about who I am,
Yeah.
so he can see me coming.
Yeah.
Like he can
Right.
anticipate. Like he'll say to me, "I know this is what you're thinking about doing, or I know this is what
Yeah.
you feel like doing, but also I know this is where you know you should be."
Right.
And it's
Very
like
cool.
just that
Yeah.
guidance, right? Like of just having someone that has your best intentions at heart, like and
Hmm.
they want the best for you, and that's why they're having this conversation with you.
Yeah.
It's a deep thing. It's like it's a beautiful thing to find in life is someone that you can talk to that way.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, and I totally agree, and I think that's beautiful. And I guess that leads me to my next point that I want to talk about. This is just
Mm.
that you're now thriving in your career, as far as I can see. I mean, you just tattooed a wicked piece on my wife's head,
Yeah,
and I love it. I stare at it every day.
not stressful
Now
at all.
I got to think about you every day too. Um,
Yeah.
but not only are you thriving in your career, you're being responsible in your recovery, but you're also in a like amazing relationship with another person in recovery, and you're like a new dad, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
stepfather.
which
Yeah.
is which is crazy. Um, it's it's just an evolution, right? Like it's the step I never thought I would take, but I
Yeah.
did, and it's like everything that's happened to me in recovery is generally marked by ending up places I never thought I wanted to be, but are better than anything I could have thought it could be.
Yes.
And
Such a great way to put it. Yeah.
it's like that's been my whole thing. Because like my dreams of where I want to go just don't even compare to what I have.
Right. Yeah.
Like and so like and much like everything else, like I met this person that she so I have a really good friend of mine, and I've known her since I got clean and sober,
Hmm.
and we've been in this thing together for a long time, and she has a best friend, and that's my partner. And so much like when your friends have a friend, like you know them, but they're over there, you're like, oh yeah, what's up? Hi. Never thought about it, right?
Yeah.
And you know, there was things going on in her life where she wasn't ready for that, and there was things going on in my life where I wasn't ready for that. And
Yep.
when it happened, it was like super organic. It was
Yeah.
it was it was a simple conversation that never ended.
Oh, wow. That's
It was
amazing.
literally just like a message to a person that I kind of knew in my peripheral, like, hey, like I see you guys doing that, it's sick. And then she's like, and we started talking, and we never got off the phone.
Wow.
And I was living on the other side of the country at this point.
Right. Right.
And so the whole start of our relationship, we were never physically in the same place.
Wow, that's
And,
wild.
and we built this relationship just from talking to each other.
Yeah.
You know, and sharing, and as you do when you meet someone and you talk, and you know, it gets increasingly deep, right? Like it stops being up here and it starts being like you start being real honest with people when you're having those kind of conversations. So
Sure.
by the time we were in the same room, it felt like, yeah, it's where I'm supposed to be.
Wow.
You know, and she had this beautiful little
Man.
girl, and you know, like I get to be a father, which is something I never thought I would want to be. You know, and I
both,
actively
yeah.
like rallied against, right? I was president of the Never Having Kids Club.
I was vice.
And, yeah, and like I was just never, I could never imagine it. And now, like again, like I said, like everything that happens in recovery is exactly what I needed, and it's better than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and like when you find purpose in that way, you know, and I always talk about this, you know, when I struggled like with faith early on, it was because like I didn't understand that things would get put in my life that were gifts that I didn't ask for.
Right.
You know,
right.
and that's how I think about higher power and stuff like that. It's just if you just like much like that room at the homeless shelter, if you just keep doing what you're supposed to do, gifts will arrive and your life will blossom like a flower in the sun, and more than you could have ever imagined. You
That's
know, it's
beautiful,
like,
man. Yeah.
and you just have this essence of like knowing you're where you're supposed to be.
Right.
Which like took years. Like, cause I don't know if you remember this, but I remember this, like coming around meetings and people telling you right where you're supposed to be, and you just want to be like, shut up.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, like they hit you with the slogan and you're like, go away, dude. Like I have real problems. Like,
yes.
You know, and now I'm like, I get it. You know, I finally understand why them old dudes were so relaxed all the time.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh yeah, no, it's fine, dude. It's where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's evolved in most of my life. It's just is like even with sponsees, like call me if you call me. If you don't, okay. You know, it's you know, or when I run into people that are using different modalities of recovery to mine, you know, it's such a spirit of cooperation, not competition, right? Like it's just like I want to see you thrive, and I don't care how you thrive.
How you get there too, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, and
I just want you to win, man.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's the spirit of recovery, right? And I think sometimes in certain groups, that spirit gets lost in the details and the minutia of you're not doing it my way, you're not doing it this way, that's not the way I did it, so it's not going to work for you, or you said this when you shouldn't have said that. And we tend to especially in these like smaller cities in recovery rooms, you know, it gets a little funky when it comes to like, oh, that person decided to go to refuge recovery or smart meetings, or you know, move from CA to AA or NA, whatever, you know, it's and it people get upset, and it's like, no, like I think what you said is so important. Like we want you to thrive in whichever way is your truth and whichever way feels the best and the most comfortable for you. But we're always over here if you want to come by and say hi.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's
we have coffee.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, man.
And that's the thing is like I understand where that attitude comes from because I've had it myself.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about that like that live and let live mindset, right? Of just like I want to just see people win because I know what it's like to lose.
Yeah.
You know, even people that I shouldn't want them to win, I want them to win.
Right.
You know, like, and yeah, it's weird. It's I used to be like, I remember I was talking about like, I used to get annoyed by people like thriving because I wasn't thriving.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's like when I was happy with my life, I started being real happy for other people.
Right. I think it's a big marker.
Yeah, like I started being real happy to see other people win.
Yeah.
You know, and now, like I said, like right back to the start of this, like I saw you do this. I'm like, that's awesome. I hope it I hope it launches into the atmosphere because I think it's important, you
Yeah,
know, and
I do
like
too. Yeah.
I don't particularly um put it out there as much on social media because my life is busy and I don't want to miss things. But like when I talk about it, I just try to be honest about where I came from.
Yeah.
I don't try to be flashy or tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do with their life. I'm just like, hey, this is where I was at, man. And if you feel that way, I love you. Like, and I hope you win.
And that's what we're responsible for, right? Just
Yeah,
telling the truth, being honest, open, and giving the real goods to people. And
yeah.
if they can grab a piece of that might inspire them to take the step towards something better in their life, then we've done our job.
And it's almost a little selfish too, because when you see somebody come in and on their first day and they just are so convinced they can't be anything but what they are,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you see them just killing it. It's like, I'm glad you're killing it, but it makes me feel really good to watch you kill it. And selfishly, that's why I want to see it because it
For
makes me feel
sure.
amazing.
Yeah.
To just watch people come back to life. There's
Yeah.
nothing like it. You can't describe it. It just, you see these people that, and exactly kind of, not exactly how they feel, but how you felt when you looked like that.
Right. It brings you back. Yeah.
And then a couple years later, you just see them and they're like, yeah, man, I just finished university.
Yeah.
All right, I just
Oh,
got
I
a
mean,
job.
that's amazing. Yeah.
Like I just got a new place. I have my own place.
Yeah.
Or even small. Dude, I paid my first phone bill.
Right.
Like
Small
those,
wins. Yeah.
huge, man, huge.
Yeah. I shouldn't say small, but like it doesn't
Yeah,
matter the how big or small that win may seem to somebody else. That's a big deal
yeah,
to that person, and it's a a pleasure to watch. And I used to always kind of think about that when I came into the rooms of recovery. I'm like, why are these people so interested in other people's like life, and why are they so happy for everybody
yeah,
else for like
yeah,
getting sober and being boring people, in my
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
And
Oh, dude.
but and I used to always question that, like, what was that all about? And now, I think you and I are sitting at a place that we can kind of appreciate and understand. And I think that'll only, as the years go by, it'll only get stronger and stronger. And the joy it brings us to watch other people do well and thrive in life is just going to become like, that's what we live for, right? And
Yeah,
we see
man.
it now and I think that transfers over into our children, right? Like
Hmm.
we're now in a place that we're capable of being like we're like examples for our children that can come up with honest conversations around whatever, around recovery or whatever they bring to us.
Yeah.
We can be real with them. We know how to we're equipped to handle the emotions that I think our parents certainly weren't,
Mm.
in their era. And I think the age that people were having kids was like a lot younger back then.
Yeah.
And and we're just, I mean, it for me, and I can imagine for yourself as well, like I finally feel like I'm in a place where I'm confident that I'm raising a child with morals and values that
Mm.
that will serve them well in life and that have worked for me. And yes, there's still mistakes I'm going to make along the way. There's still bumps along the road, but
Yeah.
I've never been more equipped to handle those. And having, our stories align so much. Like, we both have partners in recovery that, it makes home life and family life so much different and so much better
Yeah.
to just say, like, rather than, okay, the kid is causing some frustration in the one person, and the other person takes it out on the partner, and it
Mm.
becomes this big ball of mess.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, what can I do to help? Where do you how do you feel right now? Let's talk about that. And it's all about these conversations that I know I personally wasn't a part of as a child, and I've never been a part of in a coexisting relationship like this, like
Yeah,
my
for
wife and
sure.
I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's healed the relationship with my parents immensely. You
Yeah.
know, um, man, like I feel way different about my dad now than I did before.
Right. Right.
I spent a lot of time highlighting where he went wrong. you know, in my life. And I almost feel like now I'm making like a living amends for him, because I can take all the really good parts of him and I can show up for her that way.
Right.
In the way that he was unable to, and not because he didn't want to, but because he was sick.
Yeah.
You know, and he didn't get a chance to do that. So like, I have the opportunity. You know, I have the opportunity to think about, instead of, because early in recovery, right, you're going through like the laundry list too of trauma and bad. And you know, for me, I was in therapy, outside therapy. I was doing everything I could, right? So I spent a lot of time on trauma, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of time on kind of the wrong turns that my parents made. And this relationship with my child now has allowed me to really connect with everything they did right.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and
it's
really
so
connect with like my dad in a way that I couldn't before.
Wow. That's
Know,
amazing.
and be like, man, you were like a really good guy with a really bad problem. Much like myself. And you know, the opportunity for you to get to where I am was taken away from you.
Right.
You know, so like I can do that. I can make a living amends for you by showing up for this kid in a way that you couldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
It's beautiful. That is so nice. Yeah.
And all the ways that he was a great man. You know, like he wasn't all bad. He was great, mostly good.
Right.
You know, as all of us are. But just having this opportunity to correct some of those things and to like really connect with how much I love my dad. You know, and really connect with how much I love my mom, and in a way that doesn't hurt. You know, because it's not attached to that other stuff anymore.
Right.
You know, like it's been heavy, but it's been really beneficial.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I mean, that's pure, that's motivation for all of us, you know, fathers and parents out there as well, you know, to take. And I think that you know, I just really want to appreciate everything that you shared with us today. I mean, I'm so grateful to have you in my life, man. It's just you're a blessing to me, like, you know, like none other. Even when we don't see each other for months and sometimes years at a time, it's like we're still connected, and we pick up from, you know, like where we left off, like, without a hitch. And yeah, you're that guy to me, and I know you're that guy to so many other people out there. And you know, I really want to thank you for coming out and sharing your story, sharing your time with us, and your experience is I know it'll be truly impactful for so many people out there. Where can people find you online if they're
yeah, I just have Instagram. I don't really do anything else. It's just at dhart_TL.
Cool.
But HART, not spelled the other way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, it's important for me to acknowledge too that like you were that for me as well.
Thank you.
Know, and I find that, you know, you find your counterparts in this thing if you just listen. You know, and you know, and it was you've been important to me like my whole recovery. You know, and I know you're that to a lot of people because I hear it. You know, like so. You know, it's important that I acknowledge that for you. Like you do a lot, man, and it's appreciated and it's seen.
Thank you, man. And right back at you. You know, I really do appreciate that. That honestly warms my heart, and I know that man, my day's gonna go so much better today just because of this conversation, man.
Yeah.
I want to thank you again, man, and you know, I look forward to seeing you, you know, very soon. Hopefully, maybe I'll book in next time for the tattoo instead of Joe.
Or we can just eat food and it doesn't hurt.
You know what? Better option. Getting tattooed in your 40s is not fun.
Silly.
Anyways, man, you have a great day, and appreciate you. I love you lots as always, bro.
Love you too, brother. Peace.